I see our esteemed historian, Mr. Webb, seems incapable of conducting what might be considered academic debate still. As a note, Mr. Webb, if you're going to conduct an academic debate, one, cite sources. Two, since you're determined to turn this into what might be politely called back and forth, consisting of ad hominem, my usage of an archaic term seems curiously rather less problematic than you running a channel on Substack where you are using terminology derived from the T4 action program from the Nazi regime and are writing around that and reference it. For those unaware of that, I'm talking about a program which was designed to remove what the Germans called useless eaters from German society and get rid of them, by which they meant the mentally incapable, the very elderly, so on, the chronically disabled, and so on. Now, I'm going to quote from some of Simon's wonderful rumblings on Substack. Here we go. This is Simon's rumblings. Now, Simon has obviously made this private, and this is copyright, so of course I'm only going to quote this in part, and I'm not going to give a link to it. If you want to go and get it, go and get it. If you'll have to pay to see it, but here we go. The Nazis were so there is a class of people for whom Western society maintains a sentimental and wholly insincere regard, containing a host of euphemisms, rather than calling them by their true names. The Nazis were, as was so often the case, more honest about this than most. Let's read that out again. The Nazis were, as was so often the case, more honest about this than most. This is a gentleman who, on his channel, calls himself a Zionist and quite rightly bemoans the Holocaust. He is having a go at me for using an archaic term for female Jews. But he is going on in this line. The Nazis were, as was so often the case, more honest about this than most. Fantastic, Mr. Webb. We'll be bearing that in mind as we go. Using the expression nutzlose esser are useless eaters for those who contributed nothing to society and whose only rule was to consume valuable resources. Today, we refer instead to senior citizens, old folks, pensioners, third ages, seniors, or simply the elderly. Before going any further, lest I cause any offence to any readers, you couldn't have caused that whereby going on about the Nazis being more honest up there. I must really confess that myself, I'm an old person. Now, I'm not going to read all this blurb out, but there is one really hilarious point here, and I'm going to press Alt and F to find it. Remember Harold Shipman? Here is another point which sheds light upon how we really feel about the elderly as opposed to how we claim to feel. Ask people to name the very worst serial killers in British history, and you will find that names such as Myra Hindley crop up, along with Jack the Ripper or Fred and Rosemary West. There is, though, a British serial killer who single-handedly killed 20 times as many people as those other four murderers put together. Lovely use of exclamation mark there for no reason, Simon. Harold Shipman, the rogue doctor who took the lives of over 400 people, never seems to be mentioned in anybody's list of wicked and ruthless killers. This is on at least the face of it more than a little odd. After all, he is not just the worst murderer in British history, but killed far more victims than even anybody in America, the home of serial killing. The reason for this neglect is simple and revealing. Harold Shipman, a much-loved GP, killed only old people. Dr. Shipman has not attracted the opprobrium of people like Myra Hindley, who was convicted of just a measly 2 murders. Our victims, though, were children, and as I mentioned above, by and large, we are fond of children. This is the devastatingly simple, if palatable truth. We don't rate Harold Shipman high in the annals of evil because he only killed the elderly. Many of us have a sneaking sympathy for the good doctor, if not outright admiration. Please, Mr. Webb, never ever deem to critique anything I have to say when you are coming out with junk like that. When you are telling us that that the idea we have a kind of sneaking admiration for people who kill hundreds of old people. It's the talk of, quite frankly, a lunatic or a psychotic. I, personally, am in the position of having to care for someone elderly. And yes, elderly people can be very bloody annoying and bloody awkward to be around, and they can be wearing and they can drive you nuts because they can be demanding. They, however, are not disposable things. They are people with their own dignity and to be treated as such. And the idea that we all want to just off them or get rid of them, that this rather, frankly, but bonkers piece of writing puts forward is actually quite frightening. You've used nasty terminology to push forward this idea, yet you've spent a video this morning telling me off for using an archaic usage of one word. Which is a bigger crime? I'll leave that to the viewer to decide.